on TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV.
Good evening and welcome to the Independent Republican Mike Graham. You're with Talk. We're on TV, we're on radio, we're online, and of course we're on your smart speaker as well. Coming up, actress Rebel Wilson claims a member of the royal family invited her to a drug-fueled orgy at the home of a US tech billionaire. Do we talk about something that we can look at and identify, and that is the birthday picture, which people thought they weren't going to see, but which they eventually did see, even as people were arguing about why the picture hadn't been released by the Prince and Princess of Wales. We get the 6th birthday of Prince Louis. There he is.
So sweet. And, you know, I just think I did talk to Katie Nichols about this. I said, do you think that this is something that we might see going forward, a change of protocol? And she felt like maybe this was just circumstance. But it's, you know, from my point of view, maybe a change of protocol is okay. Maybe the Prince and Princess of Wales are setting some boundaries and they're saying, you know what, everything's going to be on our terms now. If you're going to question us and if you're going to try to publicly humiliate us over a photo, then we're just going to release them on social media and you're not going to have access to them. And that, you know, that opportunity and that privilege is gone. And if that's the way they want to do it, I think good for them, because I thought that the first few months of 2024 for them were a nightmare from hell. And I really sympathize with them there.
Absolutely right. Kinsey, stay where you are if you wouldn't mind. I was going to bring in broadcaster Barrister Andrew Eborn and broadcaster Candice Holdsworth. Welcome to both of you. Well done for coming. Now, my first thought when I looked at that picture today was just please don't have changed it or edited it in any way or done anything to it. Is it just a straightforward picture? Because otherwise the world will go mad again. No,
absolutely. And then to be fair to Kate, I mean, the previous photo which she released, all she was trying to do was make it look as good as possible.
Yes.
It wasn't like a photograph with FAUX, you see what I did there. That the reality was, and if you look back at royal photos, they've always done that. You had the Queen with all the grandchildren, that was clearly edited in a particular way. William, he wasn't smiling enough at Sophie and Edward's wedding, and therefore he was photoshopped in with a smiling one. This happens
None of
the
the facts don't matter, though, when the nutters get hold of this stuff. So, you know, you just want to make sure that it was a straightforward picture. And it's a lovely picture.
It's a glorious picture. There was never any ill intent in the previous ones either. But it's a lovely picture. He's looking wonderful, Louis, and all credit to him. We need some good royal stories to balance the rebel one.
It is sad that they've now got this adversarial relationship with the big photo agencies.
Yeah.
And I did think that Getty was just being a little bit overly harsh when they were saying these photos may have been edited. I mean, like as if they were creating deep fakes.
Like tampered with.
Yes.
Well, but to be fair on that, the policy, just to be clear on the agencies, is that you cannot have manipulated. They all say that in their terms and conditions. So you cannot manipulate a photo, and that's what they say to their clients. These are not manipulated in any way. So what didn't happen in the media is that clear explanation.
Yes.
Well, they turned around and said, oh, it's a fake, and because it's a fake, this is all fake news, and so on and so forth. It wasn't fake news. It worked on that sort of premise, and I think getting that clarity is important.
The King has recognised public service of his family in a new list of honours, including creating a new role for Kate, the Princess of Wales. She's going to be the Royal Companion of the Order of the Companions of Honour. Which is a bit of a mouthful,
so many companions
but,
there.
you know, it sounds good.
What's going to be really interesting, it's Archie's birthday on the 6th of May, which is obviously the anniversary of the coronation. You might recall that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how they play.
And how old is he going to be?
I think he's going to be 6, isn't he?
6 as well?
5.
Oh, 5. No, you're right. He's 5. 2019, he worked on that basis. So, he's 5.
Nobody's really seen many pictures of kids, have they?
They've kept him. So it'd be interesting to see what they do there and in response, I think, on that sort of basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome back. You're watching the Independent Republican Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. Just hours after the Rwanda Bill came into law, the French Navy escorted a packed migrant dinghy across into Britain, despite 5 people tragically dying as they made the treacherous journey. And now, after 2 years of wrangling over Rwanda, it begs the question, will the Prime Minister's strategy of deterrence actually work? Joining me to discuss all of this, Deputy Editor for The Sun, Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, Ryan Saby, broadcaster and journalist Emma Wolfe, and barrister and broadcaster Andrew Eborn. There he is, the man himself. Welcome to all of you. You've been here already once. So, we were here last night, went off air slightly before it all went through the House of Lords. I mean, I saw people saying today, Ryan, so the House of Lords is effectively now officially useless. which is probably a bit harsh. But, I mean, all of this surely could have been done quicker.
If we take Rishi Sunak at his word, and he said at that press conference, he stood there in Downing Street and he said that they're all ready to go. So, and I think it's going to take 10, 12 weeks. You've got to work out whether they're going to have any legal challenges. They seem to think they've got 150 cases. They're actually legally watertight.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, Emma, I don't have confidence that they've got this.
Well, his body language was interesting at that press conference as well, because he looked as though he was a man who finally got it past the line, didn't he? And work on that sort of basis. But I think...
But he can't, hang on, but he can't believe that, Emma, can he? Can he really believe that?
I think he has to believe it.
Is your name Emma, by the way?
Promises.
Is your name Emma? He's not.
I'm sorry.
You keep answering when I say Emma. That means I want her to answer me. Emma, please.
Well, no. I mean, look, he's become utterly fixated, almost like a man possessed about getting it through. So finally he's got it through. Is there any link between stopping the small boat and this ludicrous Rwanda? I don't see the link. It is not a deterrent. Right, so I just don't see the link.
There's 100 people on this boat. Yeah. Now, seeing as this accident happened at sea. Yeah. Some of them went back to France. Right. The others went to the UK. This is how desperate these people are.
But this is what happens, though.
It's not a deterrent.
But they will carry on doing it.
Yeah, of course they will. Andrew.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the pictures they show in the press, however, it doesn't look like 100 people on one of those sort of boats. So it is interesting to look at that sort of side. Whether it's a deterrent or not, as you say, Rwanda at the moment can only process 200 people anyway. So that's why they're looking at Costa Rica and various other places to make that make sense. What has to happen, as we always say, is the focus needs to be on the people traffickers. Get the message to them that we're actually after you and we're going to try and deal with that.
Yeah, but that's not going to work, is it? Because you might as well say to drug dealers, don't bring drugs into Britain because we'll put you in prison. They know that already. They still do it because the money is so huge.
This is part of Labour's big idea. They are going to go sort of upstream and they're going to try and find the people smugglers. How are you going to, getting British police work with the European police, really closely? I don't know if that's going to work and be successful.
Well, all of it's been tried, hasn't it? And the immigration minister, I think Tomlinson, was on TV earlier on today saying that they haven't. He was asked directly, have you actually got cases that you can now deport? Yeah. And he didn't seem very sure. He wasn't sure if they'd actually got a list. He wasn't sure if people had been processed and then refused. They don't seem to be prepared for it at all, it seems to me.
No, and exactly, and you don't have... It's not as though you have people on small boats being taken off the boats when they land and put on flights. I mean, that isn't a deterrent in that way because they know what will happen. Yeah. The people who are being hand-picked, it made it sound like an exclusive kind of guest. Yeah, yeah. The people who are being hand-picked, the 150 or so, will be from the backlog.
And where are these people?
Who are they? Where are they?
Yeah, and I mean, if they are going to be taken out, are they being taken out of hotels? Are they being taken out of holding areas, of ex-army camps? Are they in accommodation in flats and houses?
I think legally it's going to be very hard to actually... Those people who, once this law gets royal assent in the next few days, I think what they may try and do is anyone who then comes over, they will be, I hate to say the phrase, but the guinea pigs of the people who may be taken, they may be detained, because once they get into the community, they will just disappear.
Right. And you can guarantee what's going to happen is the press around that. Sunak has to have that victory. His 5 pledges, he's got to get at least one person there to Rwanda, and I think that will happen.
I think that would be just pathetic, though. If that's
I think that's even worse.
It's even worse.
One
almost.
or
if you go, we've got
20 people.
Maybe you can't answer this question, but I'm going to ask you, Andrew, you're a lawyer. Presumably, they haven't outlawed legal aid being made available for these people
you have
to fight deportation. So there'll be a string of lawyers lining up to
There'll
take
be
legal
so
aid
many
money.
last-minute, those very, very last-minute death row appeals before they're put onto
so that was the Andrew as opposed to the Emma, but it was good, but it worked well.
I'm now a criminal barrister.
But you're absolutely right, and that's what they've done. They redefine what's safe, which is the bizarre way of doing it. I always talk about Abraham Lincoln. If you call the tail of a dog a leg, how many legs does a dog have? It's still 4 because calling a tail doesn't make it a leg. And the reality is exactly that. So just because they've called it a safe country doesn't necessarily mean that the lawyers can't turn around and say, actually, this person is not going to be safe. There are other laws and regulations which will happen. Right. So what they've got to look for is to make sure that there's a certain case that they can get. I do predict, a definition of spring will probably go into summer, but that's going to be the reality. They will get at least one as a point of principle, and the press around that will be huge. But exactly that sort of thing, lawyers will have a field day trying to stop it.
Well, one of the things that they were arguing about in the House of Lords, I think the last amendment, which they eventually gave up on, was to have something put into the bill which said if it becomes more dangerous in the future, we'll have to stop sending people there. So there's bound to be lawyers who'll get up in court and say, well, how do we know that it's now safe despite the fact that you said it was safe 3 months ago, it might not be safe now. They'll just go on and on with it, won't they?
Yeah, no, so, and I think that the trouble is you can have those individual cases, they'll always find a reason. And we had one lawyer on the radio this morning saying that, you know, does mental health come into it? Well,
yeah,
it will. It will.
How long is a piece of string? I mean, one thing is for sure, this has ruined Rwanda's reputation. And as for those other countries you mentioned, Costa Rica and all the other ones that they've approached,
to begin with, to be fair.
No other country will want to go near a UK government's deportation scheme in the future. I mean, I know Rwanda have made a lot of money out of this thus far. Yeah, take the money. But I don't think they would, if they could go back.
I think you'll
who
be
will
surprised,
ever go to Rwanda now as a holiday destination? No way.
Right.
Well, no,
and what about the sort of political lesson from this? Can we say that we now know there won't be an election in July as a result of this? Will they try and do an election early if they do manage to get a couple of people sent over there?
I think he has to. A plane has to take off, and I think there probably has to be, as he said yesterday, there has to be a regular rhythm of planes going off. And I think the thinking in Downing Street has always been this: looking at a general election in October, November. I just don't think. I don't. You wouldn't want to go into a general election where you haven't got any planes taken off to Rwanda. You are still technically in recession, and the waiting lists in the NHS are still high. Yeah. I still think he needs a bit more time to actually get things in his favour.
Yeah, but it might get worse though.
And he is still saying.
This is the trouble. Some people in cabinet have been actually saying you need to go early because it's a damage limitation exercise. You actually, you could make things worse by going longer.
Or you can wait until Trump gets elected because you might have a better chance, and that would be interesting.
Yeah, well, who knows?
And he is still sort of saying the second half of the year.
Yeah. Yes.
I think that's where the money is.
Definitely, October, November.
Well, listen, we'll come back to all of you very shortly. You're watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Up. Welcome back. You're watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. It's St George's Day today, of course, but I don't think St George would have been very impressed with the scenes at an event in Whitehall today when a group of attendees clashed with the police. As you can see, there was always going to be a group of people who were going to go to Whitehall to have their celebration. It's an annual event. They always do it, and it always turns into something that it shouldn't turn into. If you were watching a bit earlier, you can see the police kind of trying to kettle the people that came down. The Metropolitan Police actually also, before it all happened, issued a statement in which they said, we believe that some of the people coming to this event are coming from football clubs and right-wing groups and are probably now going to be causing trouble. And as you can see at one point at the end, a horse actually gets whacked on the nose with an umbrella. And it's all very tedious. It also happened to coincide with Tommy Robinson being in a court today in which he was found to have been arrested unlawfully and in which he basically won against the police. And so it all kind of comes together. We'll talk about it in a second. The panel's back with me. Andrew Eborn is here, Candice Holdsworth, Emma Wolf as well. Welcome back. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, St George's Day is one of those days, a bit like International Men's Day, isn't it? Yeah. Where men always say, why isn't there an International Men's Day when there's an International Women's Day? And they go, well, there is. And they go, oh, right, OK then. And it's St George's Day, it's a bit similar. I mean, I've said a couple of the last 2 days, there is a certain part of Britain that seems somehow ashamed to be English. You know, you can wave a saltire in Scotland, you can wave a flag at St David in Wales, you can wave a tricolour in Ireland, but in England it's not really the done thing to wave a St George's flag. I don't understand why.
We should take pride in our glorious country, and we shouldn't basically. If people are looking for offence or they're looking for trouble, it's basically it will spark it, won't it?
But a lot of complaints came in from people on the right, and you know, a lot of people don't agree with many of the people who are doing this demonstration today. But there's no question that the police treat them differently to the way that they treat, you know, Black Lives Matter, is the way that they treat, you know, the Palestinian marchers when they come through London. They deliberately look for them and try and push them around. And they weren't all just men who'd been in the pub, you know, dressed as crusaders. And there was a lot of women there. There were some kids there as well. The police have a problem in London dealing with what they perceive to be right-wing protesters.
I know. I think the thing that I don't like about it is the snobbery directed towards people. Yeah. Who wave the St George's flag. I mean, there's sort of this, like, it's seen as a low status
Yeah, you're considered to be some kind of knuckle dragger.
Yes. And, you know, Emily Thornberry really revealed New Labour's contempt for the working class when she took that picture of someone with a St. George's
Rochester,
flag.
Kent, yeah.
Yes, you know, and it just showed how far they'd actually strayed from their roots.
And Keir Starmer's desperately trying to get that back now. I mean, he gave a little video today in which he talked about how, you know, the St. George's flag was for everyone and, you know, he's all for Britain and Labour's now the party of patriotism.
Yes.
Well, that's news to most people, I think, Emma, isn't it?
And Labour were right out of the blocks at about 7 o'clock this morning tweeting their St. George's flag. It's been a bit of a fight back, hasn't it? Suddenly, all the kind of right-on people are saying, you know, we're proud of being English.
Yeah.
But why should we feel apologetic for being proud of being English? Not even British, just English with our St. George's flag. It's so strange, isn't it?
I know. It's very strange.
Not
now, here's
far
something
right,
else
and
that's
it's
strange.
not racist.
No, exactly right. Now, I've been asked to seek your guidance on this, Andrew,
please.
In your capacity as an older lawyer.
An older lawyer?
Yes.
Is that right?
Because apparently if you use the word back in your day to an older work colleague, it could be age harassment.
Well,
according to an employment judge.
Absolutely, in the same way.
I mean, I just had it from a woman doctor who was talking to me there about how you're better off being treated by a woman doctor who's less likely to die.
Well,
she said to me, I don't know whether you can remember your school days. I mean, I could take that. I could take that very badly.
Well, exactly. Well, I remember when in primary school.
I remember them very well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The reality is this, and it's all happening at the moment. We had somebody very recently where he was in his 60s, and he was offered a chair.
Right.
And they turned around and said, hang about that's ageist.
Ageist.
And, on that sort of basis. You've had somebody turning around where they say, don't play the race card with me.
Right.
And they turned around and said, that's the thing. The problem with all of this, it devalues real prejudice.
Yeah.
And when you get taking it too extreme, it's working on that sort of basis. So I think it's okay to say back in my day.
Do you guys care?
No, jeez. I mean, you just have to be way more resilient.
Yeah.
I cannot stand this fragility culture now, where comments, but comments that everyone would have just thought of as completely innocuous, 10, 15 years ago, and now I think it's this growth of this sort of HR bureaucracy, and it's got to find purpose for itself. It's got to find meaning for itself, and so it creates problems where there aren't really any problems.
Well, the microaggressions are now listed, aren't they? So that if you go and join a company, these are things you can't do or can't say.
And it started with
terrifying to even open one's mouth, isn't it? No, I do think, though, in ageism, I'm glad that this is being highlighted. I think there's a lot of casual ageism around, which people don't realise can be quite offensive. It can be, but then there's real ageism, and that should probably be, the resources should be devoted to actually dealing with that. The fact that if you're over 50, it's very, very hard to get a job, or the fact that women are obviously subjected to ageism, really, obviously.
So real prejudice needs to be called out, but it's this artificial, and it's about intention. For me, it goes back to the things like, where are you from? Was not meant to be a racist statement. And you work with Lady Huston.
But also, as a woman, I guess you've also been through this where it might have been thought to be innocuous, but if somebody sort of treated you like the little woman, you won't know about this because it's cars, or you won't know about this because it's, numbers, and you won't be very good at that. People used to do that too, which probably wasn't a good thing.
Well, but I'm also quite old-fashioned.
But it still goes on. It still goes on. The other day at a different station, not this station, I was introduced as a journalist, and the man, and I've written 10 books. The man next to me, who's written 1 book, was introduced as a writer and author and journalist and broadcaster. And I wouldn't have said anything, but it's just little things like that women do still experience that kind of, you won't know about it, or they'll always go to the man on politics or tech.
Yes,
and they won't, and they'll go to the woman on health stories.
That's wrong.
And touchy-feely.
But the fake outrage, when you get things when people, out of common courtesy, I was brought up, you open doors for ladies, for your seats and so on.
That's lovely, but that's...
I do that. I open doors for both of you. And some people take offence at that. And I think that's so unfair.
But that's their problem, isn't it?
Yes, because you don't take offence.
But that's aggressive. No. Why would you take offence at someone being polite, whether they're a man or a woman?
But even when I'm walking somebody on the road, I would stand where the traffic, on the side of the traffic to protect them. That's the old sort of stuff.
But it's not natural anymore. I think a lot of there's this perception now that people take offence at everything when they don't. And
so easy to take
offence.
And
I just don't think people take an intuitive approach to culture anymore. I think they're always second-guessing how their behaviour is going to affect
I don't know how people date
else.
or ever try and kiss a lady man or a man friend or whatever, because you would be terrified.
My teenage sons, and I've no idea what they do or how they do it.
Do they sign contracts? I mean, really, there's stuff about consent
I don't
and
really
contracts.
ask them, but I mean, they haven't been in trouble so far. So
But they take less
hopefully everything's fine. Nobody's been around to knock on the door going, do you know what's happened? But I know actually friends of mine who have had horrible experiences where their teenage son has been accused of some kind of sexual assault.
Yes.
And
Yes.
suddenly it goes into a police situation.
Awful. Yes.
And, you know, it's awful, really.
No, absolutely.
But we
awful.
wonder why they're in their bedrooms and they're not out, like taking risks and socialising, because they are so afraid.
And it shouldn't be a risk, you're right. There should be a society where it's OK, call out the appalling stuff,
of
but actually allow people to interact in a way
but the
which
difference is,
not
Andrew, that there are some people who are younger than us,
Yes.
and I'm
Only a
sorry
few.
to lump you in with me,
Yes.
who find some things appalling that you and I don't find appalling.
Oh, no, that's right. And it's
You know,
interesting.
that's where we are.
What I love is a great example. On social media, a lot of people, we have a bit of banter between us.
I was being accused of bullying you.
No, it was lovely. And where are we? I love the people at home because they come to our defence, and it's glorious, and thank you very much for that. But there's a bit of banter.
Yeah.
And this is what we've got to have. You've got to have a society where you can rib each other and tease each other. And it's not meant with offence. I always go back to intention. What is intended?
Yes.
If you don't mean to be offensive, you don't mean to other bits and pieces, let people have banter.
But is the
let people
law
have nice
also to
balance.
blame here as well? Because there are you can find a lawyer now in this country. When I lived in America for 10 years, I used to say the bane of this country is that you can't do anything without a lawyer.
Yes.
You know, if you want to sign a lease for a flat, if you want to rent some office space, if you want to rent a car, you know, you've got to sign legal documents. You've got to, and they won't let you sign them unless you've got a lawyer.
Yes.
And it's getting that way here. You can find a lawyer for anything now.
Yes.
And I think that has not...
Quite right, too. I think that's a good step.
No, but it's not been helpful because lawyers clog up the works. They're not about common sense. They're about trying to build frameworks around you so that you don't do the wrong thing.
But to be fair, the good lawyers are those who talk about eventualities and say, whilst people are talking, here's what we would do in such and such a circumstance. You can then put that document away and just get on with life. Because actually you've sorted out, while you're still talking, a sensible way of resolving it.
But you don't need it written down, though. That's the point.
I think we've lost things like morals and good manners and upbringing, because when you start making everything into hate speech and a hate crime, what that comes down to is the fact that we don't have a basic level of a standard of decency within society that we can all adhere to.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
And then you have to start making it into crimes.
And also,
it becomes
I think
rigid.
the more you write down and make it rigid, the less sort of British
you don't want to prescribe life.
Yes.
But being brought up, I say, it's going back to the whole idea about treat people with respect.
Yes.
And you work on that sort of basis. And
But
it's
also,
all right
you
to
have to be
laugh.
resilient. You have to be a bit, as Candice says, you have to be a bit more resilient.
Yes.
If you're deeply offended by what someone says, sometimes you just have to be offended. Just turn
have
it
a bit of
off,
fun.
just switch it off.
Life is funny. Sometimes you need that release. You need that
Also,
sort of
some
banter.
people are just offensive.
Yes.
Don't talk to them.
Yeah.
You know? Just move along. Find somebody
They're
else.
idiots. They won't have any friends.
But it was
End
P.T.
of.
Barnum. P.T. Barnum, who always said, if you want to draw a crowd, start a fight.
Yes.
And that's what the media does. They play up these sort of relationships on that sort of basis. But we live in a society where there's all sorts of troubles going on, genuine troubles.
Yeah.
And I think these things are distracting.
They are.
The minor things basically nullify what are really, really serious issues.
Well, that's as nice as I've been to you for the whole show.
I know.
So it's going to stop now.
Thank you.
Shut up now so that everybody else can have a chance to talk. Let's talk about motorways. The most ridiculously named smart motorways, the least smart thing I've ever met in my entire career as a journalist. Apparently, you won't be surprised today, the technology breaks down quite a lot, like at least once a day.
These are terrifying, these roads. I was saying to Andrew, I remember as a child endlessly breaking down on motorways. Dad would get out the red triangle and put it up. Middle of the night, you know, trying to change a tyre, and we would, you know, all the children in the car just wondering. The idea of being on a smart motorway, breaking down, not having a hard shoulder to pull onto. Maybe your lights have failed as well. Maybe the big end's gone. Do you remember that? The big end.
There's nothing worse than your big end going. I can
when
tell
the big end goes.
Our fan belt was always going.
It really, it really is.
You used to have to use your tights, didn't you? For doing the
Very,
fan
very
belt.
scary. And as you say, the technology, the safety equipment is breaking down as well, and people really have no access to.
And I was looking at the list of things that they said that broke down. So no sign, signals, camera or radar at a particular junction 18 on the M6 for 5 days. And the problem is if you don't
if they can't see that you're there, they can't
go
come and
bang,
rescue you.
right into the back of you. It's really, really dangerous.
But we're enthralled to technology all the time, and we always think technology is the solution, and oftentimes it's not, especially when it breaks down. It's, you know, this is going to seem so petty, but it's like those fancy taps with sensors that, that never work. And it was just like the original technology that we had, where you just turned on hot and cold.
Turn a tap on.
Worked perfectly.
Have you ever been in a hotel room and the lighting is so complicated that you spend about an hour trying to turn on the light over your bed and turn off the bathroom.
Yes.
You know, and I just think, give me a light switch.
That's what you want. On and off, boom, boom.
And you're the same with televisions. You have about 20 remote controls. You've got no idea.
No, I know.
What is going on?
Absolute and utter nightmare. Now, let's talk about...
bring back the old days.
Bring back the old days. Sandwiches. Here's a good one.
Oh, I love this one.
The Sun have got this, and it's page 7. BLT, the best thing in sliced bread. So the BLT has apparently been voted the top 10 number 1 sandwich.
Yes.
It is good at BLT.
Oh, it's very
good. Wonderful. I tell you what's not on the list, which I find surprising, is a salt beef sandwich.
No.
Those are great.
Come on.
With
salt
pickle,
beef sandwich with pickles and that sort of stuff, and a bit of mustard.
That's
that
good.
is glorious. I find surprising at number, it was down at number 3, equal third, is a fish finger sandwich. Do you like those?
I'm not a big fan. I don't mind fish fingers, but I don't like them in a sandwich. But that's a very popular pub lunch, isn't it?
People put crisps inside sandwiches.
Yeah, well,
that's a northern thing, isn't it?
Is that tasty?
No,
I don't like
I've done
funny
it.
combination.
No, I think it's a very northern.
They deep fry Mars bars up there as well.
Deep fried Mars actually are terrific. They do taste very good.
They're good.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of an open sandwich.
Yes, that's good.
You know, or sort of a tuna with some melted cheese on it.
Oh, that's a winner, isn't it?
You know, that's quite good.
The paninis and things
Coronation chicken, I think, has had its day.
Oh, I'm not a fan.
Not one of those.
Well, I'm the only veggie on this panel. My favourite
what's
is
yours?
grated carrot with hummus all over it in a sandwich. That's a really good one.
That's a very
They used
refreshing
to
one.
make it, but they don't anymore.
But coronation chicken was invented for the coronation, the same way they made a lemon posset.
Not this last one, the one before.
The one before, exactly.
That's why I think it's had its day. Back in your day, that was all right.
Back in my day. Oh, that's so offensive.
Thank you very much. Now, a boy has won some kind of competition.
Yes.
Doing a seagull impression.
This is amazing.
Oh, good.
3, 2, 1.
Oh my God.
So this guy's
Brilliant.
9 years old.
I mean, this is what makes Britain great. I presume this took place in Britain.
Yes.
They're actually having a seagull impersonation
I love it.
competition. Why? I don't know.
92 out of 100 for his points.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
He
very
beat
good.
all the adults. He did brilliantly. Apparently, he was inspired when a seagull stole his ham sandwich.
Yes.
Got quite into seagulls.
I hope he went round and stole everybody's chips, because that would have been the perfect impersonation.
Yeah.
Worked on that sort of basis.
I mean, down in Hastings, which is not far from where I spend my weekends, it's terrifying in the summer. People come there, they have no idea. They sit
are
outside.
evil.
There's fish and chip shops everywhere. There's old fishing huts where people like to wander about, and there's genuine fishermen coming in. But there's so many seagulls, and they're huge. They're like this big.
They are,
and they will literally come and sit on the table where people are eating and just start eating.
Oh, no, and they get more and more brave.
Yeah.
They work on that basis. And they are huge, as you say.
They're massive, unbelievable. And also, they're very toxic. The stuff that they drop on the car, you want to get it cleaned like straight away.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know.
But I love that little boy who not only did the noise, but he also had this glorious outfit as well.
You want to give us your seagull impression?
Is that right? What's that? It's more like an eagle, isn't it?
I don't know what the arms are
eagle.
doing.
Do they not do that? Do they not do that?
Go on, Andrew.
Go on, then. Well, let's have your one.
That's all right.
That's a gorilla. That's a
South African seagull.
Go on,
Well,
then.
in South Africa, the problems are baboons, actually.
Oh,
not
yeah, exactly.
seagulls.
It does sound more
That did sound more like a baboon, actually.
It was a baboon. Go on, Emma.
No. I have a
doing
career
it.
to
Good
think
for
of.
you, Emma.
not doing
Mike
it.
Graham,
Good for
I have
you.
a career to
Good
think
for
of.
She's not doing it. We've all
Good
got
for
careers to
you.
think of. How do you think I got here? By doing impressions of rap.
That's very good. though.
Anyway, you're watching The Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Coming up after the break, a Just Stop All GP's been struck off, and the best from today's newspapers and tomorrow's stories as well. Don't you move.
I have a brilliant one.
Welcome back. You're watching The Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. Now, it's time for this.
The world of woke.
So the Easter holidays are well and truly over, and so the petty protest movements that have become so endemic to our way of life have abated for the moment. But have no fear, the Just Stop All Brigade will be out in force once more before you can say May Bank Holiday. And the new kids on the block, Youth Demand, have barely worked out what their next move will be after getting nowhere fast in the last few weeks. The climate emergency, of course, demands it, as does the genocide in Gaza, as they call it. Just Stop Oil have already promised to spend the summer gluing themselves to airports, clambering onto planes and lying down on runways to disrupt the summer holidays of hard-working people in this country. They say they have to do it to raise awareness of the climate crisis, and no one sensible believes them. Their increasingly manic behaviour can only be explained by a kind of collective derangement syndrome. We know there are sons and daughters of the wealthy taking part. We've seen the nutty grannies that have joined in. But today, we have learned of a new cohort to the cause, actual grown-up people who have real jobs. How do we know? Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the case of Dr. Sarah Benn, a bona fide GP who was arrested and jailed for taking part in 3 climate protests with Just Stop Oil in Kingsbury, North Warwickshire in 2022. She took part in a sit-down protest at an oil terminal in breach of an injunction, which then led to her imprisonment. And now she faces being struck off as a doctor. The British Medical Association are crying that it's all so unfair. Well, breaking the law has consequences, and so it should have. A GP should surely know better and be more responsible. She spent 31 days in jail. And here's what she had to say. The climate crisis is the most significant existential threat to global health we have ever faced. In medicine, when an emergency is declared, immediate action is expected, not just words. We are trained as doctors to intervene decisively to avert tragedy. Therefore, this situation requires nothing less than decisive intervention. Well, perhaps Dr. Benn might want to address the actual health emergency in this country that would be the one where millions of people are waiting months and sometimes years for treatment on the NHS. Or she could help to reduce the number of people waiting over 2 weeks for a doctor's appointment by actually going to work instead of protesting illegally outside a bloody oil terminal. Given what she has said about the climate emergency, it seems pretty likely that she's going to protest again sometime soon or at any time in the future. And the NHS needs doctors that are dedicated to their medical work. You can do without people like her. Thanks very much. Go woke, go broke.
The world of woke.
The BMA, of course, very upset about this, saying, oh, you shouldn't strike off the doctor. She was just doing what she felt she believed in. Panel's back with me. Guys, I mean, if you go and break the law in any job, generally speaking, you lose your job, don't you?
Yes, she's not being discriminated against for her political opinions.
No.
She broke the law.
Yeah. Right.
And so there are consequences for that.
And discrimination works both ways. It's positive and negative. So if you look at the whole idea of the law is supposed to be blind and it's equal justice to everybody, and that has to be right.
Yes, but that's not the issue. The issue here is whether or not she gets struck off as a doctor by the Doctors Association or whatever it is. It's not the BMA, that's the union. But it's not the law that's striking her off. It is the professional organisation that monitors doctors. And if you're a doctor, if you break the law, you're out, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so it's that consequence. So saying this is what your thing says, you've broken the law, there's the consequence. Yeah. As long as you've got clarity and it applies to everybody, that's why it's work on that sort of basis.
Yeah, I think so. And also, if you're a doctor, given the state of the NHS, and you're going to be in prison for 31 days and you're likely to do it again, because clearly, I mean, I'm sorry, people who are this obsessed with the climate emergency are not thinking rationally.
No.
You know, there's far more emergencies out there about people who are dying from cancer. We had cancer figures just this week, which have said that since lockdown, you know, the cancer waiting lists are getting longer. Yes. More people are getting into stage 4 cancer who shouldn't ever have got there. You know, that's a proper emergency. You know, not worrying about whether your bloody, you know, feet are going to get wet in a couple of thousand years.
It's real life people, isn't it? And it's real life, I don't know, older people living in pain with, you know, a hip operation that isn't going to be scheduled for another 2 years or something. It's so depressing when people go on about these.
Front page of The Sun, we've got the big picture that we mentioned earlier. Prince Louis flashing a cheeky smile, photo taken by his mother to mark his 6th birthday. It's a sweet picture.
It's a very sweet picture.
Looks just like her.
And no Photoshop required.
Hey, very good.
Yeah. Also on the front page, Swifty Guide to Taylor's London. Now, I've managed, I think, to get all the way through last week and this week without mentioning Taylor Swift. New album's out.
Amazing.
Talking
the
about
tortured poets department.
The number of people in newspapers who are writing about this, you know, it's now become, if you're a columnist in this day and age, you have to write about Taylor Swift, whether it's about the revenge against your ex-boyfriend. This is about all the people who are flocking to this particular pub, I think, in
her drawing power is amazing.
She's a remarkable
200 million, I can tell you, within 24 hours of the Tortured Poets Department being released, had 200 million streams on Spotify.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Incredible.
She's got $1 billion era tour at the moment. And you're right, just mentioning this pub, the Black Dog, all of a sudden people are flocking in to go and see it.
Yeah, it is remarkable.
And this is a career that has lasted. I mean, she was famous as a very successful country singer as a young teenager, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Named after
she's
James
now
Taylor.
in her 30s.
Yeah.
She hasn't, you know, become any less popular as she's gone along.
And if anything, she keeps reinventing herself. And that's
I
a great
don't
way of
wish
doing it.
her ill, but I find her music so bland.
She loves your music.
And so boring. And
really?
I cannot imagine my teenage years being defined by Taylor Swift.
No, I think she's actually, I hate to say it, but I think her music's really good.
It's brilliant.
I
If you listen to
think-
the
I
lyrics-
think
I
of
like it, actually.
Fleetwood
Yeah, I do.
Mac, I think of Alanis Morissette, I think of all these like cool female singers who had
Yeah, but see, the difference between, funnily enough, and the reason I know this is I read a piece today in the
Yes.
Times about different revenge songs, and Alanis Morissette's famous one.
Jagged
you know,
Little Pill.
Yeah, where she's really vitriolic and bitter about
Yes.
her ex-husband or her ex-boyfriend.
Yes.
Taylor Swift is a little bit more subtle about
No,
it.
she's nuanced, isn't
and
she?
she's kind of, the reason the Black Dog comes up is because she's talking about this ex-boyfriend of hers who she said she saw his location because he'd forgotten to switch his location off. So even though they'd broken up, she knew he was going there.
Yeah.
And that's why everyone's going there.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, maybe you're just too old for it, Ken.
Well, I think
Well, it's like the generational shift from like, you know, old Hollywood. We had all these like wisecracking, brilliant female stars, and then you sort of went into the 1950s. And it was so bland.
Do you like Ed Sheeran?
And
It's
it
a
was-
similar sort of thing with Ed.
No.
You don't like him either?
No, I don't like Ed Sheeran because he is bland. But I don't think Taylor Swift is bland. If you look at some of the lyrics that she writes, she's pretty vicious.
And
about
she's
certain
incredibly influential. They had that stuff you might remember about Marsha during the, I think it was the midterms, wasn't it, in America? And they were telling her she came out for the first time ever and talked about Trump in a wig, is what she called her.
Right.
And
she's also
basically
able to move the dial at football games.
Yes.
You know, millions of people watch football games because she's there. It's quite ridiculous, but it's the thing.
Well, if her ex was at a pub in Vauxhall, maybe there's something else she needs to know about him.
Well, very much so. Well, Vauxhall's quite trendy for some people. What about Diamond Weezer in the Sun?
Oh, I love it.
Love this story.
Great old crime capers. Brian Reed, a mastermind of the Hatton Garden heist, which actually I think you and I both thought was a lot longer ago.
Yes, it's only
I think I was getting it confused with Brinks Mac.
You were.
It was many decades ago in the 60s.
Yeah.
Hatton Garden was...
No, Brinks Mac was kind of in the 80s.
The 80s.
Yeah.
Ronnie Biggs and that sort of stuff.
No, not Ronnie.
He was even earlier. Great brain robber.
Trained
Noy. Noy was Brinks
Kenny
Mac.
Noy was Brinks Mac,
Hatton Garden heist was 2015.
I know, amazing, isn't it? And the film was 2017, I think, with Michael Caine.
2018,
Didn't he play him?
But this guy's the mastermind of the heist. He's died at the age of 84.
Yes.
He takes to the grave, as they always say in these great newspaper stories, some of the secrets of the millions in missing
He was a
because they never
fence.
find the money.
He would sell on these stolen goods, and apparently he knew every inch of Hatton Garden. Isn't that amazing?
It is,
Yes.
good.
It's quite near me. It's an
all
amazing
credit to the
place.
Sun writer who turned around. Diamond Weezer, come on, we've got to recognise. There's always the pun is mightier than the sword. I love
Well,
it
Mike Sullivan has been the crime editor of The Sun for many a year, a decade, actually, and he knows all of these characters.
Right.
It's quite remarkable. Funnily enough, in the Brinks Mac thing, it was my one and only chance to get sent to Brazil. I was in America and I got sent because they captured somebody in Rio, and it wasn't Ronnie Biggs, it was Brinks Mac.
Yeah.
And I got down to Florida, and I made the dreaded mistake, which you had to do in those days because we didn't have mobile phones, call the office. Called the office, and they said, he's on his way to Miami, just stay where you are. I was like,
Mike, you should have carried
I wanted
on.
to go to Rio. I should have just got on the plane, but that wasn't what you did in those days. So, there we are. Speaking of which, the 10 biggest mistakes you can make at the airport. I'm going to finish with this. Not booking parking, turning up too early, turning up too late, buying currency, not bringing your bottle, not weighing luggage. I mean, who needs this advice?
Well, turning up too late is a pretty basic error if you're trying to catch a flight.
I've missed the
failed,
flight.
number one.
But on the list, they're also saying buying duty-free is a mistake. That's rubbish, isn't it? People love to buy duty-free.
Well, it can be. It can be, depending on which airline you're flying.
Okay.
And that's the problem with it. But anyway, I haven't got time to get into it now, so I'm just going to bully you off the show. Thank you very much indeed to both of you. That's all for us tonight. You've been watching The Independent Republic and Mike Graham. I'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. sharp. Don't be late, don't be early. It's only on Talk TV. Good night.